Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Legends podcast with Sarah Faruya from Sarah Faruya Coaching. I believe that everybody has stories and I want to tell them, and there are many, many ways to lead a life. And today I have my amazing friend, Susannah Streeter here. Hi, Susannah.
Hello.
Nice to see you. Thanks so much for joining us today. So we're recording this on December the 21st, 2020. We're in month 10.5 of the coronavirus pandemic, and the UK, where Susannah's calling in from, has just gone into tier 4 in some areas and tier 3 lockdowns. So there's a little bit of a dark cloud over some parts of the UK today, but not between us, because it's just such a delight to be speaking to you today.
Never. It's always so lovely to talk to you, and it's great to be part of this podcast
Thank
series as well. Very exciting. You certainly brighten up my day.
All right, so about Susannah, she's a highly experienced broadcaster and financial commentator who has anchored flagship business news programs on TV and radio and hosts major summits, conferences and events around the world. Prior to covering an international news agenda, Susannah was a regular face on BBC One Breakfast, reported live from across the UK. She also reported for the Consumer Affairs programme Working Lunch and the BBC Budget programme. Between 1997 and 2007, Susannah served in the Royal Auxiliary Air Force, joining 7644 Squadron, a media operations unit, where she rose to the rank of squadron leader. So, welcome, 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 my squad leader. So just quickly going back to that BBC One Breakfast, a very quick anecdote for you here, Susannah, which is that when my husband and I got married in 2006, my husband went downstairs to make his breakfast, put the television on, and suddenly shouted up, Sarah, Susannah's on the television interviewing Justin Timberlake. And you were 5 months pregnant, and he was so thrilled. And I'm really happy that you gave him that experience to be a little star.
Oh, that was such a roller coaster day that day. I mean, it wasn't just Justin Timberlake. He came right at the end of the day. I mean, I was interviewing before him. I'd been up about 6. I'd been up to be on air at 6 a.m. So up about 4 a.m. I think I was doing something about energy bills. And then I hot-footed it down to London to interview Philip Green, the boss of the Arcadia Empire. And actually, the last couple of weeks I've been reporting on how that empire has collapsed. And then after that, Justin Timberlake was a bit of an anecdote right at the end of the day, squeezed in between all those different interviews. But it was a real privilege to interview him, as it was, so many different kind of pop stars or politicians or business men and women that I interviewed at breakfast. But at breakfast, it was quite funny because even though I was the business reporter, I literally got sent to do pretty much anything, from Justin Timberlake to Jennifer Aniston on the red carpet to then water voles in Northumbria another day. So it was very varied, I can tell you.
Well, I'm so pleased that my husband got to see you talking to Justin Timberlake and not water voles on that day. He was absolutely thrilled. And then you rocked up at our wedding as well. So, he's quite starstruck. So let's get into it. So why don't you tell me a bit about your background, your ancestry, your upbringing and your childhood?
So I was born in Wiltshire, southwest of the UK, in a very rural setting. I went to a village school, have 2 sisters, my mum and dad, and we lived on the edge of a village overlooking fields. And we went to the village school, which was tiny, about 24 pupils in the entire school. I had 5 or 6 people in my year. So it was a very kind of, intimate setting. You knew everybody in the village. We were allowed to kind of roam around the fields. And interestingly, one of the memories I had just popped up this week about how we used to do country dancing as part of our curriculum. An hour of do-si-do, and it was very rural.
Yeah.
But in a way, because it was so small, you did also have quite a lot of freedom to just kind of roam, which I think is great when you're a child. And then when I was 11, I moved to the outskirts of Bath, which was a much better place to be a teenager because we could get the bus in with all our friends and go and experience the Bath nightlife, probably at too young an age. But it was a great place to be. And I'm a very close-knit family. So my 2 sisters, one's 3 years younger than me, one's 2 years older than me. I'm bang smack in the middle. We're all born in the same month. And I think, you know, we've got we're really close knit, but we did used to argue a lot when we were kids, definitely, you know, fierce rows, but then you quickly get over it. And we're all kind of really best of friends now. So, yeah, after Bath and my time at my comprehensive school, I then went to university and went into journalism.
Amazing, amazing. So what were you like as a child, Susannah? What were you like? I mean, you were the middle child. What influence do you think that had on you, and what were you like? What were your interests?
I was quite determined and keen to make my own mark. I think, you know, perhaps it's a middle child thing. I don't know. You kind of want to assert where you are in the
Yeah.
family. And I think I was pretty adventurous. I did get very much liked drama and dancing, and was really into performing, I think, from quite a young age. We used to hold these performances out on the grass with all the neighbours and get all the parents to watch. And then I joined, I was in the ballet club, ballet dance school. And then when I moved to near Bath, I joined a drama club which had links into TV companies. And so then I was able to do amateur dramatics on a semi-professional scale, actually moving into children's TV drama. And that was really great fun. And I mixed with people from right across the city of Bristol as well, and was in a few shows like Casualty, which was a kind of a hospital drama, and a children's TV drama as well. So that was really great fun, and definitely kind of widened my horizons and broadened my horizons about what I could possibly do next.
So you were a determined child. What were you? Were you kind of sandwiched between your two sisters? What were they like? Like, was there a shy one, and then the kind of the cute one, the cool one? What? It's a
Well, my
weird
sister
question.
always used to wear, she was quite into the Cure and used to wear DM boots and was very trendy.
Mhm.
And obviously I couldn't do that. So I tried to do something else. I was probably quite annoying. I used to obviously want to do what she did. And she used to go to bars and pubs first, obviously because she was older, and I was desperate to do that. And then she went to university, and then I was desperate to go to university. And then Judy, my younger sister, and I, Juliet, we then went on holiday together, and then we kind of bonded a lot more and used to hang out together. So you know, it's really difficult to know exactly what you were like.
Ah,
I, you know, had a wide group of friends. We weren't too good, but we weren't too naughty.
yeah,
We were kind of tread that fine line in between.
yeah. You know, it's interesting because when I kind of interview people who are maybe over 40, we often talk about how free our childhoods were and how much we were outdoors and things like that. So I always like to like note that. But you've just brought up the thing of like how young we were when we started going out. And I think
Absolutely.
about
We
it
were. And
now.
actually, now I have a 14-year-old and I have an 11-year-old and a 6-year-old. And I live in a city, and it's a different experience for them growing up. However, I do really try and allow them to, well, we live where we live in Bristol, we've had an edge of woods all the way around. So we try and go into the woods as much as possible. And I let my 14-year-old go off on his bike as much as he can on his own. And I know that there are some parents who are really concerned about them going out and riding their bikes, but they need that independence, because if they don't get that independence, they can never really, when they get to a point in the future where you have to make it up as you go along, you don't have that experience to do that. So just an anecdote, he was meant to be cycling to my parents' house, which is around, I don't know, 20 kilometers away. And my husband lost him, but he managed to get there. He didn't know where he was going, but asking 17 people on the way, finding his way without a map or a phone or anything, he did it. But I think if I hadn't allowed him to go out on his own before, for the last couple of years, he probably wouldn't have had the nous to get on his bike and find find where he was meant to be. But
Yeah.
we had a few hours of slight panic.
Yeah, well, that's a really interesting story, actually. And you think about it, the first time I went to a club, I was 15. And I just
Yeah.
look at like my friends' daughters and sons who are like similar age, and it just seems a little bit different now. I suppose every
Well, do you
generation
know what?
in our day.
Yeah, well, and you worry about your children going out to nightclubs and bars because of. However, I think as long as you kind of instill some good grounding and give them a bit of allowance, a bit of freedom, then they're not going to go so far and be really radical when they're older. But it is quite sad with lockdowns. My son has now turned his bedroom into a kind of disco. He's got these flashing lights and connects with his friends through the Xbox and the PlayStation, which has actually been a complete godsend, because I just don't know how we would have coped, because we didn't have this level of technology. We didn't have this ability to connect in a room, you know, the multiplayer format where you're able to link up with friends all the way around the world. He links up with friends in London. My other son links up with friends in Spain, and they all play together of an evening. Now, back when we were kids, what would we have done? We'd been literally shut in our houses without any outdoor activity or able to meet our friends at all. So in one way, I feel as though the way that society has moved is limiting, because we don't allow them to roam so much, but in a way they're roaming virtually even more than we did. So it's really fascinating.
I love that, Susannah. I love that really optimistic but just very straightforward approach, which is like every generation has its own different ways of doing the world, right?
Yeah, but don't get me wrong, we are still worried about screen use and how much time they spend on screens and whether they could end up being addicted. But I think as far as during the pandemic, we're facing fresh lockdowns, and we, you know, we could be, and they could be kept off school for months again, but at least I think they can have some kind of social interaction, and that is just so important, I think, for their mental health, for just family harmony. Although don't get me wrong, it's not always harmonious when you're trying to get them off the devices at the end of the day. So it is tricky, but I think I suppose from my experience growing up, if you're allowed to have more freedom, you're just happier. So you do need to give them that freedom, and you need to, it is a worry and there are dangers, but when they're adults, we have all these dangers to deal with anyway, don't we? So they've got to give them a bit of time to bit by bit approach those dangers, I think.
Yeah, very much so. And I'm just thinking, I wonder how much our phone bills would have been when we were teenagers.
Yeah, but we would have been fighting over the landlines.
Yes.
God, it's my turn now. Yeah.
Stretchy twirly cord like that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh dear. So when did you start, what did you study for A levels?
I did French, history and English. In fact, I also did an AS economics A level, and I was advised to concentrate on 3, not bother with the half.
Yeah.
Which now I regret. It's funny, I should have just stuck at it, because I really, now economics is a massive part of my job, and it has been for the past 15, 20 years. And it's fascinating about, you know, how money makes the world go round, and money supply, and just how different economies and political systems, you know, intertwine, and how it affects business and the stock market. And it's funny how I was interested in it back then, and it's kind of come full circle, and now I'm an investment analyst looking at that pretty much day to day. But I think because I was really interested in performing in amateur dramatics, I did still, just as I went to university, I'd only just left kind of acting behind and thought, no, I want to try something else. And then broadcasting was a way of bringing together my interest in politics and economics and performing, because I thought, well, I could go and be a broadcast journalist and present the news. So that was a kind of middle way that I thought would bring all the different elements of what I like to do together. And certainly that's what I did then after I graduated, for the next 15 or so years. But another key, crucial part of what I chose to do was French. And actually, as I was growing up in my studies, I don't think French was, you know, I wasn't an A-lister in French. However, I did do a French exchange when I was 13. And the town that I lived closest to, Cant, was twinned with Libourne, so very close to Bristol and Bordeaux. And I met this girl called Vanessa, and she was just fantastic, and her family were fantastic. And I completely fell in love with them in France and that whole Aquitaine region. And so I spent my next few summers there, really, hanging out with Vanessa at the beach, speaking French, meeting French people, going to French nightclubs. And that really did then change the direction of my life, because then I thought, no, I definitely want to do French at university. And I did a French degree, spent a year in France, and then in a way, subsequently in journalism, I didn't use French that much, but every single holiday I've spent it in France. And actually my love of France started at a really young age, when my parents, fed up with the rain in England, used to take us camping in the south of France when we were kids. And so that's where my love of France really did grow. I mean, one year we didn't have much money, so we couldn't really afford to take the car over on the ferry. So we just hitchhiked. We all got little rucksacks on our backs, as 3 girls. I think we were 5, 8 and 10 at the time. My mum and dad caught the bus down to the ferry, got on as foot passengers, came off the other end, hitchhiked a bit, went on buses everywhere, pitched our tents and had an amazing holiday. So I think, my get up and go as well has been formed since those years when my parents used to take us camping and just set up wherever we wanted to, really.
Amazing. Love that. And I always think of you as being very, very strongly connected to France. And you, in fact, Les Petits Anglais is one of your little nicknames, isn't it? That your family.
Yes. Les Petits Anglais.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's actually after a French film of some naughty schoolgirls, but I kind of twisted it around a little bit. And just to show that we've been having fun in France. I mean, my family, we love going there. I'm trying to teach the kids French. Some of the middle one's a bit more resistant, but the other 2 are really keen to learn, and they can really see the benefits. My oldest son is now really into surfing. In fact, I decided to learn how to surf before I was 40 because I decided that I needed to go into the water with the kids, and I needed to be out at the back line with them so that I wouldn't be so nervous standing at the beach, on the beach looking out. So that's what I do with them. I go surfing in the summer with them in France, and it's brilliant. I love it. And so that's certainly kept their interest in French to some extent, because they want to make sure that they can chat with the other surfers when they're out there.
Now, are you still friends with Vanessa and her family?
So I'm very good friends with Vanessa and her family. Very sadly, Vanessa has moved to Montreal in Canada, and I have not yet been able to go and see her. Mm-hmm. But I am still really in contact with her. And I'm very much in contact with her brother and her mum. In fact, her brother's daughter was my bridesmaid, and then my daughter was his bridesmaid. And I see Vanessa's mum all the time. She's like my French mum, effectively. Uh-huh. So, a couple of times a year, I'm over there, their house, having a great time, always in contact with them, on social media. So, yeah, I'm still very close to them. And that's great because, that was a relationship formed so many years ago. And it just shows how, taking that leap, it's quite hard as a teenager to go and stay with a family you don't know and speaking a different language for 2 weeks. But you do it, yeah. You can have such great rewards at the end of it. It's just that taking that leap of faith and jumping into something you feel concerned about. But you've just got to do it, because if you don't, you miss out on what could be such a rich experience, which it did prove to be.
Love it. It's interesting you should have said about doing AS economics. I did AS French and abandoned it after 1 year because same reason. I was doing, I think, biology, chemistry and maths. Why though? And I was like desperate to hold on to something from the kind of art side, and yeah, it didn't work.
I know, and it's funny, isn't it? Because I think part of the schools want to up their grades and make sure that you get as much as you can in the A-levels you do take, but actually having that broader curriculum, and I regret as well not doing German. But you can't do everything, can you?
No,
I mean, you have to make some kind of choice. And then actually I did love speaking German as well. It's just that my love of France overtook, because I've met this French family and they were just so great.
My husband's learning Russian at the moment, which is interesting.
Wow, that is impressive.
I know. Well, anyway, we've got a Russian friend, so there you go. So where did you, so you mentioned briefly about kind of thinking about broadcasting and journalism and marrying these different interests together, but I wonder, so if I'm not mistaken, I'm pulling out all my 30-year-old knowledge. You did society and government and French, is that right?
Yeah, so society and government was a combination of looking at how societies evolved, political systems. So it was very much, and economics. So it was very much a combination of all three.
Yeah.
And French. So and then in French you learn all about the economy and society and history at the same time as the language. So it was definitely a combination, and I think that was a really good grounding actually for a career in journalism, going on from that. And I don't really remember, I spent quite a lot of time beavering away at the Sun newspaper at Aston University. Not the Sun, yeah. But the Sun, Aston University's
Yes,
newspaper.
yeah.
And there was a break-in, so I went down to be the reporter of the break-in at the student flat. Got quite a few bylines and did some work experience at Radio WM as well, where I actually spent most of my time, sadly, just wrapping up presents for the for the guest show winners. But it kind of got my foot in the door, and then I took my CV by hand around radio stations around Bristol, including an organisation that did the eye in the sky traffic reporting around the southwest. So I had to kind of report on the traffic news, and once went up into the plane and did the reporting from the sky. So I was pretty determined to get that job in broadcasting, and then I just took baby steps really, from local radio to local TV to regional TV to BBC Three, which was a new kind of youth channel on the BBC. So I was one of the reporters and presenters of their new news program and their 60-second bulletin. And then from that, I moved to Breakfast and got a job there, where I was for about 5 or 6 years before I moved on to doing much more core business news for the BBC News Channel and the BBC World Service.
Wow. Okay, so that was a really brief whiz through your.
Yeah, it was that is quite brief, but that was kind of the trajectory of what I was doing. But it took, I think this is the thing when people say, oh, how do I get into journalism? Well, it's baby steps all the way, because I remember feeling just frustrated that, I was doing the eye in the sky traffic reporting, but I really wanted to be the presenter on Sky News. But obviously you can't, because you don't have the experience, and you really have to be in it for the long haul and recognize that every little step you take helps build up your knowledge, build up your confidence, build up your ability to cope in situations completely out of your control. And you really need that for live broadcasting. You really need that grounding of what will happen if it all goes wrong. Well, if everything goes wrong at every step of the way, which it often does is in live broadcasting, by the time you get to a big audience, it doesn't faze you so much. And, all the different rules and, reporting as far as court cases are concerned, they're very intricate and very important. So you need to make sure you get the groundwork right from the get-go, and you have to take baby steps. You can't whiz through it. If you do, it's crash and burn time, I think.
Interesting. And I mean, that's just such great life advice as well, Susannah. And, I just want to kind of whiz back to university, which is where we met 30 years ago. We were met in our first week at university, as you were living with one of my friends who I went to school with. And I mean, we had a pretty wild ride there, didn't we? But we won't go into.
I would say that we definitely made the most of our university years. Yes.
Yes, we definitely.
As in, we went out every single night during the first year, bar one, I think, including the entire exam period.
Correct. And we were legendary, and we had a little gang called the Birds. And we won't go into too many details, but what I can say is we did have a great deal of incredible fun.
And yes, and do you know what? I was thinking about our Birds group. What really struck me, I came from a family of 3 girls. And nobody held us back. Nobody said, oh, you're a woman. Well, obviously, my house was a female house. I mean, my dad was definitely in the minority. Even the cat was female, Tabitha. So it was very female dominant. And then I went to university in Birmingham, and suddenly you come across big groups of blokes, say from the rugby club and the football club, who called themselves the Stags and the Cobras. And well, actually, at that time, 1991, there was a bit of misogyny around, I definitely would say. And I'm sure you probably would agree. Yeah. And so we were like, what are these Cobras and Stags? Who are they? We can be the Birds. So we got our own athletics tops made with birds on the back, and used to go out as they did in a huge group of women to counteract their huge groups of very dominant men on campus.
Yeah.
And it was very empowering, wasn't it? I mean, it really was. And actually, it way before the kind of whole Me Too movement, we were already thinking come on, we're not going to put up with this dominance and telling us how we should behave and what we should do. We are strong women, way before the Spice Girls.
Yeah, exactly. Way before the Spice Girls, and
Or any kind, I mean,
they
that's
would always
quite,
be
I'm
like,
not,
"Oi,
that
bird."
makes it sound really frivolous, because obviously the Spice Girls, but all of these different kind of movements that there have been, I think we really were feeling it right back in the early 90s, that actually it's not okay to be dismissive and to say, all right, bird, in a very kind of dismissive way. We were like, okay, yeah, I am a bird, and I'm going to be proud of being a bird, and you're not going to take that away from me, and that's, I'm going to own it. So it can't be an insult anymore. So I definitely think we we owned the birds for a long time. And in fact, the birds as a group of friends has endured, I would say, over the past 3 decades, hasn't it? So we're still very
Yeah,
close knit, and that bird network is strong.
yeah. I feel very warm-hearted now. Just got goosebumps thinking about that. But back to you, Susannah. So you were like this powerhouse at university. Even in the first year, I can remember, like, I went to aerobics once, but you would go every week. We'd go out, we'd be playing out, we didn't use party as a verb back then, so I'm going to try not to now. We would go out and we would have parties, and we would be drinking till the small hours. And then you'd be up every morning, 7 o'clock, either swimming or aerobics or something like that. And I would just be like, wow, this woman is amazing. How did you do it?
I don't know. I just get up and get up.
Get up and get on
Get
with
up and go.
Yeah.
I think if I've got something in my head that I'm going to do, I do it.
Yeah.
I don't have an excuse.
Yeah, you don't.
And in fact, part of my I've realized over the years, I can be when people let me down, I do feel a bit, I just feel, well, why have they just suddenly not done that? I mean, for me, letting down somebody or not doing something you say you're going to do, I just very rarely do it unless I'm really conked out with an illness or something has come up that I absolutely can't do. I mean, I don't want to go out for the evening and I've said I'll go out because I've said I'll go out. Or if I've committed to a class, I'll go to the class. Or if I've made some other kind of commitment, I'll keep it, because I just think it's, I don't know, maybe I have a high standard, or I just find it rude to not do that. I don't really know where that comes from. I must be honest. I suppose my parents got up every single morning and went to work. Both of them. My mum worked as a teacher, my dad worked as an accountant, and every morning without fail they'll be up and out the door. And sometimes the house was in a bit of chaos with 3 children trying to get ready as well and find their boots and shoes and everything. But we always got to school on time in a slightly haphazard way, but we got there, and my mum and dad were always got to work. There wasn't any time for slacking. And I suppose I've kind of kept that in my head, that you just got to get up and get on with it.
Do you think you eased off on that at all now, Susannah, as you kind of got older a bit?
Well,
realised.
I think that what you realise is you can't do everything. You literally can't have everything. You can't have a family, have a social life, have a career, have a job, be doing lots of global travel. So I made a decision earlier this year. In fact, just as the pandemic hit, there was a job that came up in Bristol that didn't come up very often, as a senior investment analyst at an investment firm, Hargreaves Lansdown, which is a really great firm, which began in Bristol and is the UK's largest investment platform. And the job as an analyst, I've always been very interested in it, because I interviewed many financial analysts and markets analysts in my job as an anchor, BBC anchor. And I always thought that's a really fascinating job, being able to concentrate fully on what these companies are doing, listed on stock markets around the world, and what central bank policy, for example, means. And the thing is, I knew that if I made that leap, it would have to be to a full-time job in London. And I love living in the southwest of England. Yeah. So that just didn't work. Working part-time as a presenter in London did work. So that's why I stayed where I was. However, this job came up in Bristol, full-time investment analyst, but it meant it was on my doorstep, and I just could not refuse that. And also it's meant that I can spend much more time at home with the family. I can have more free time at a weekend rather than traveling back from London after a late shift on Friday. And it's definitely helped the work-life balance. And so it also means as well that I can still do global conferences without feeling as though I'm going away far too much away from the family. So you can't, you can't have, or you can't be an international broadcaster, live in the place that you want to live, um, you know, be an analyst and then do all this global travel. It's just simply not possible. So, you have to kind of pick and choose where you want to put your energies and time. And so this is what I've chosen right now, and I'm really enjoying it.
Wonderful. So I want to kind of rewind then just after you graduated from university. So you went down to Bristol again. You also started up with the RAF around this time, if I'm not mistaken, or did that start at university? And
No, it didn't start. Well, no, it didn't start at university, although I was interested in joining the Officer Training Corps of the Army, but there was only one in Birmingham. And I think, Sarah, you just kept me too busy going to all those parties. I didn't have time. But then what happened was, as I first got my first job in broadcasting at a local radio station back in Wiltshire, near where I was born, I went to do a story on Partnership for Peace. And it was the Royal Air Force partnering up with air forces from the Eastern Bloc. So, Hungary, for example. And it was, I was really struck by it. And I thought, this is incredible. After the Cold War, the Second World War, the Cold War, we are involved in these Partnership for Peace ties with different countries to try and maintain peace around Europe. And I thought, I really want to be part of this. And then that week, I also saw an advert for a reserve squadron as an air traffic controller. And I just thought, local radio, it's not really giving me the global travel that I thought that I'd get in my 20s. Yeah. I'm kind of stuck around the one patch. Let's join. So I joined. And then I told somebody at the base where I was reporting on quite regularly that I joined, and they said, look, you don't want to join that squadron with your media expertise. You want to join 7644 Squadron, which I did. Went to Officer Training Corps College in Cranwell in Lincolnshire, did a lot of remote training over the course of a year, and then graduated as a pilot officer. So for the next 8 to 9 years, spent a lot of my holiday time, my weekend time in that squadron, traveling around the world, getting called up to go to different places with the combat camera team. And I trained, I helped set up the combat camera team. So because I was a video journalist, I was able, to show people how to use the camera and go and shoot footage of the troops in various different trouble spots around the world. So it was a fantastic experience over 9 years, but I definitely did shoehorn that in with my broadcasting career. And actually working with ITV, when I worked at ITV in particular, they were really good at allowing me time off to go and pursue that element of my career, at the same time as then coming back and being a journalist as well. However, I had to draw that to a close when I had children, because you couldn't be a journalist and a part-time squadron leader and a mother. So again, that was when I had to close down one chapter and just stick with the 2 other chapters going forward.
One thing I note about you, Susannah, is that you and your partner, husband Paul, have such a strong relationship and just have worked this really incredible kind of, I don't know if I'd exactly call it balance, but proportioning your lives out, and who's the parent who spends the most time in the home. And of course you were coming backwards and forwards from London all the time. You had your own flat in London. But first, how did you meet Paul?
Actually, it was through a journalist, and it was through a photojournalist friend of ours called Dave, who was working at a news agency where I was working at, getting work experience. Mm-hmm. And Paul was his good friend as well. So we very much met via Dave, who's an absolute star and a legend in his own right. In fact, he definitely deserves to be on this series, I can tell you.
He's introduced.
So he's photographed everybody from, George W. Bush to, well, I mean, the number of people he's photographed and his portraits are fantastic. And now he concentrates on National Geographic. But Dave comes over from Canada to visit us very frequently. And he's now my daughter's godfather. So he very much got us together, him and his wife, Naomi, and they are legends. So yes, and Paul he's such a rock, and don't get me wrong, it can be quite difficult to work out that balance, as in many relationships. Who's doing what in the home, who's doing what in their careers, how do you strike that right balance? And there are difficult conversations sometimes, like in any relationship, about how you get it right. But I think we have worked really hard to get it right and make sure that we have lots of fun as well.
Yeah, and you definitely do have lots of fun. And, having come to your party last year, continue to have these incredible parties and just have a lot of fun and just a great communication style. And I don't know, I like and admire you as a couple, if you don't mind me saying. I think it's really marvelous. And also, I just think, you had your apartment or your flat in London, really close to was it close to Shepherd's Bush,
Yeah.
where BBC used to be? And then you also had you also, of course, have had a few homes that you've bought in Bristol, having just recently bought that beautiful big house that you've got there now. And I don't mean to make that sound gauche or anything like that. I mean, it's just a very lovely old-fashioned house that you've done out so beautifully.
Do you know what? One thing I really regret is that my granddad hasn't been able to come to this house, because when he came back to Bristol after the Second World War, him and his brother, they pulled a handcart around the streets of Bristol. They didn't have, a vehicle to get their building business going again. And he worked with master plasterers and, did all these lovely ornate ceilings. And now I've got a lovely ornate ceiling in my house. And I do just think it would have been so lovely for my granddad to see that, his hard work meant that my mum went to university, went to teacher training college, and then her hard work meant that I worked hard and I achieved. And, there's a kind of knock-on effect through the generations. And he would have loved to have come for dinner here. He would have loved it. But, in a couple of generations, it's hard graft, and I know how difficult it must have been for my granddad and my grandma after the Second World War. After he didn't see my mum for 5 years. She was born in the middle of the war, and it took him a long time to come back, having gone all the way to Malta and then all the way up through Italy. It must have been so tough to come back and, get to know your daughter again, restart your life, try and get your job back on track, try and build up your business once more, self-employed. And in his garden, he kept that cart, Fletcher and Sons. And it was a real reminder of just, how hard it was. And you kind of forget, you forget just, just how tough it must have been. And, we've got the pandemic now, and it's really hard for so many different people, but they'll dust themselves off and get on with it again. Everybody's just got to.
Yeah, I think this is a really good point, Susannah, and you have this lovely attitude always of kind of, keep moving on. And we were talking about this just before we started recording as well. And, this may be the first time for us that we've gone through something like this. I consider myself quite lucky and quite blessed that the first 48 years of my life didn't involve my house being bombed, or do you know what I mean? I mean, you've or like, I didn't live in Aleppo. I have never, been in the middle of somewhere which has had an epidemic of such grand proportions so far, or my country wasn't suddenly invaded one day. I feel very this is something that really helps me to keep things in perspective, and not to be like, blessed and blurry, not that kind of, woo thing. I just mean in a very, very kind of, this isn't the first time this has ever happened. It's the first time it's ever happened to me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And, there are, it's a shipwreck of the pandemic and across so many different economies. But like, for example, one statistic that struck me last week when I was looking through the Bank of England figures was the number of small businesses that have sprung up, the number of startups. So in the first week of December in the UK, there were 5,000 more startups this year than last year, just in 1 week. And, there's 80,000 more businesses which have sprung up this year. And obviously it's because so many people have lost their jobs, but it just shows that there's such determination. Okay, I've lost my job, or I'm on furlough, or I don't know what the future is going to hold. I am going to take this opportunity and I'm going to do what I've always wanted to do, and I'm going to start my own business. And all those little kernels, it's going to be tough. Some of them are going to fail, but some of them won't, and it will be the start of something new. So there are people looking at this as an opportunity, but it's very hard to keep chipper. Yeah. I mean, it's really hard if you're isolated in a small flat on your own without any family and friends, with no outdoor space, or you're cooped up with a family, how your children, and you're trying to homeschool them. I know how hard it was in the summer trying to homeschool, and I've got, a decent sized house, but I'm not in a flat, and it's so difficult. I just my heart goes out to all those people who are really, really struggling. I mean, everyone struggled a little bit, but some people really are struggling.
Yeah,
However,
really.
you do think things will turn a corner. You have to have hope, and there are already people doing some amazing things. There's another group called This Mum Runs in Bristol that I've followed really closely because I interviewed the founder, Mel Bound, and she encourages mums just to get out running and just to feel better, or anybody really, just get out, join a running group, join one of their groups. And during the pandemic, they were using these runs to distribute medicines to people in lockdown. So they'd run to the pharmacy, then they'd run to the house and deliver the medicine, and then they'd run on to someone else. So, there's so many amazing initiatives happening through this. So you've just really got to focus on all the good stuff.
Yeah, to keep your head above water, definitely. But I'm just struck by how much kind of both of us are kind of pinballing around. It's like, yes, amazing things. Oh, but then there are and I think it's also very important listening to both of us to bear in mind all the different situations and all the different things that people are going through, and to be as kind and supporting and as loving as possible, I suppose, is the bottom line. But also to,
and it's quite tricky as well when you're working as an investment analyst. You're very much driven by what's happening, say, for example, with companies on the stock market. And sometimes you feel, you're just giving the headline rates and you're not then telling the stories of what it means for the employee. So particularly with the whole retail collapses that we've seen, it's so important that you just think, you're not just reporting figures, you are reporting people's livelihoods. And you kind of have a responsibility to say, look, this is what's happening now, but these are the opportunities ahead. And it's part of you have to look at the immediacy, but also the potential.
The immediacy and the potential. Let me just stop there. That's lovely. The immediacy and the potential. Okay. Yeah.
And how, for example, how the high street at the moment, lots of shops look like they're going to be shuttered, but things will change. There will be an evolution. It's not the death, it's an evolution, and it will turn into something else, but we've just got to give it a bit of time. So just, one example, but it is very tough, and it's hard to see beyond the immediate horizon. But there's a huge amount of funding being put in, not just from governments, but from central banks. There's a lot of money washing around looking for somewhere to land. It will land eventually. And so we just kind of clinging on until the recovery comes.
Do you have any, I have no idea, but do you have anything in your mind about how long that will be, Susannah, just out of interest? Obviously.
Well, I think that once the vaccines are rolled out, we're talking middle of next year, things are going to look a lot better. I think once the most vulnerable groups in society are vaccinated, and already here in the UK, that is getting underway. So many, hundreds per day in just the hospitals, individual hospitals, hundreds of thousands expected over the next few months. So I do think that once those vulnerable groups have been vaccinated, that is definitely going to ease pressure. Then these lockdowns which are coming will also dampen down those infection spikes, which will allow more sectors to reopen once again. We're in the first, few dark days of yet more lockdowns, and it's going to be really tough. But there are vaccines being rolled out, and we're looking like there's going to be another AstraZeneca vaccine approved, which will help. So I do think that there will be significant recovery by the middle of next year. I think the global travel industry is going to take a lot longer to recover because people will still be nervous, and there was going to be different vaccine rollouts in different countries. And so there is going to be a lot of confusion on that. And that means that as well, because there's different staggering of the rollouts, that will have an impact on global growth. It's not going to rebound quite as quickly. I don't think anybody foresaw that the infection rates would spike quite so dramatically, particularly here in the UK, and in parts of the United States as well. But the vaccines are coming, which is such a relief. And I think optimism will start washing back through again as we get more into the new year.
Love it. All right, we need to bring it back to you, Susannah. I feel like we veered off into your professional life there, so I'm going to bring it back to you now. So I also just want to mention the beautiful marriage of the RAF and France at your wedding, which I was lucky enough to come to. You held it at the lovely RAF. What was it called? The RAF Centre?
The RAF Club. Yeah.
The RAF Club.
Great. And very sadly, the RAF Club, I just got an email this morning talking about how they'd opened up and now they've had to close again and cancel all the Christmas bookings. And it's such a beautiful building,
gorgeous,
overlooking Green Park, and it's got such history.
Yeah.
There's a plaque of a crest of every squadron around the walls of the corridors, and a lot of history about the Battle of Britain. And it's such a great place to go. And yes, I had my wedding reception there. And then the next day, because I wanted to marry the RAF experience and my love of France, we all then set off over to France to go and have another celebration in a little chateau in Normandy, which was completely crazy. So everybody was slightly worse for wear still. Well, the passengers were anyway, and trotted off around the M25 and through the tunnel. Yeah. Down into Normandy, and we did it all over again, complete with fireworks. So that really was amazing, wasn't it? Apart from the fact that everybody hit a traffic jam around the M25, so we're late.
Well, also I was wildly sick and had to leave after the starters, and I seem to remember.
Oh gosh, yeah, you had the norovirus. Oh, viruses and traffic jams. We're right back there, right now, aren't we?
I remember.
At least that was just hitting, a few people.
Yeah, and I remember you saying you turned around and I was sitting there, and then you turned around again and I'd gone and there was just this big fish in my place, and it looked
you'd asked for a vegetarian meal, and
yes.
Yeah, it was. I don't think that part of Normandy quite cottoned on to what a vegetarian meal was.
Oh, well,
so yeah, you left, and in your place was a huge fish.
And you were like,
it looked like you'd turned into a fish.
I wish I had. So sick.
And that ended with the conga about 4 a.m. around the grounds.
So sad that I missed it all, but you can't. These things you can't control them.
But right? You were there in spirit on the day before, so I was eking it out a bit, my celebration. To be fair,
brilliant, absolutely brilliant. It was just like, that's what I love about us all. We all just kind of. I mean, we all just get on with all these like wild ideas, and we've lived a million different lives between us, haven't we, the birds?
Yeah, and I do think there's so much more to come.
Oh, yes.
And I think when you get to, your 40s and you realise there's another couple of decades, hopefully, in front of us, and there's more to do. And we don't know where the next twist of our career may be in the future. So I think it's, you need to kind of open up your mind to all the different possibilities. And I think we're feeling that right across our friendship group at the moment, that you go like, the careers go like that in peaks and troughs, and you've just got to realize that there will be another peak again. And I think that I went through a stage of feeling as though I had reached a certain level and was pretty much stagnating, and I loved the program that I was presenting on the World Service, but I'd been doing it for 5 or 6 years and I needed a new challenge. And then you don't know where that challenge is going to come, but when it comes, you do have to seize it, because it's not necessarily going to be around for long. So I think, my challenge always is making sure I've got enough downtime. I very rarely sit down and just read the magazines and have a cup of tea. And I need to do more of that. I'll try and make that my New Year's resolution. But I've just got into, during the pandemic, cold water swimming. And I'm not that brave, but it is like 8 degrees in the water and I've got a wetsuit. So yesterday I went off with my friend in our Santa hats and we had a good swim in the marine lake, which had just been filled up with seawater in Clevedon. But next year I'm determined to graduate to cold water swimming in a swimming costume, because the men and women who do it are very, very hardy and it's exhilarating.
This is massive in the UK at the moment. I follow a few accounts on Instagram about this, because now I live by the sea. I like to go swimming, but I haven't been that brave yet to do that. I was swimming in the islands recently, but not.
Oh, it's amazing.
Is it?
However, I do think what you need to do is you need to have a neoprene hat, neoprene gloves, and neoprene boots.
Got it.
And then you can go in the swimming costume because it's you've got to make sure your extremities stay as warm as they can, because that's when it can be dangerous. So if your extremities get cold, your core can stay warmer. But then if your extremities get cold and then all that cold blood then rushes into your core, that's when you can have what's called the drop. And that can be really dangerous. You've got to make sure that you've got the right kit. I mean, it's like anything. No, it's never cold. You're just not wearing enough clothes. So, however, I'm not brave enough yet. Next year, I will be brave enough to go in my swim costume with just those bits. But I think for now, I'm just going to keep going in my wetsuit.
Amazing. Love it. So I just want to hear, so one question I have for you, which is maybe a bit out of left field, is I love your style. And we're going to kind of come in and land this a bit now. Well, of course, being on TV all the time and being on TV like almost every day, you had to kind of cycle your outfits around. How did you choose your outfit?
Well, I very quickly realized I'm quite small, and definitely realized that one color block is best. And so I have a huge array of dresses that I've built up over the years, which really do suit any occasion. I mean, it's easy, just get a dress. Which color? Just get a dress. And so they're kind of that straight line dress. Not necessarily always long sleeves, but cap sleeves, no straps. Long, like some kind of sleeve.
Yeah.
And some kind of quite fitted but straight form dress.
Yeah.
In a bright jewelry type color. That's definitely a kind of good option for me. But you do learn that over time to not wear things with prints that are too outrageous or colors, and then you get to know your colors. I did actually go and get my colors done once, and I did think, what is this? This is just like ridiculous. I know what suits me, but actually it was really useful. I think that those and it kind of helps you eliminate too many unwanted clothes in your wardrobe.
Yeah, you can
walk. And I have for the first time color coordinated my wardrobe. So I open it and I can go blue dress, pink dress, peach dress, and that actually really works when you're short of time.
Love that. And I think it also means that when you walk into a shop, you can just walk straight past the stuff that doesn't suit you as well.
And don't buy anything that needs ironing. Why do people buy stuff that needs ironing? I mean, it's such a waste of time. I mean, obviously after you've rolled up your clothes and put them in a suitcase and traveled around the world, then they might need a little bit of an iron. But generally, you can buy dresses that you can just wash or dry clean and just hang up, and I really also do try and buy dresses that I can just wash rather than dry clean, because that's just another trip that you don't need. So it's all to do with minimizing effort.
And your home as well. Your home is beautiful. It's got this gorgeous kind of shabby chic about it. What was do you have
I like that. I like the fact that you got shabby but chic. Yeah. I would say it's probably more shabby.
I think so. It's just so cozy, but also
I mean, I do like I've always loved antiques, and I don't know whether you remember, Sarah, one of the things I used to jump out of bed for when we were at university was the rag market in Birmingham on a Saturday morning, and I used to go there even with a hangover and search out the bargains. I've always loved antiques. I've always loved kind of retro, kind of a hint of retro clothing, anything to do with, Second World War, Art Deco, 1930s, 1940s. That really is kind of the era that I love. And I think in a way that my love of history, and that sparked my interest in the Royal Air Force, and also then my kind of interest in design and clothing. I like the whole remembering what people did back then and what led us to where we are today. And I think I like to have that element of nostalgia throughout my life.
So from nostalgia to the future, what are you looking forward to, and what's next for you, Susannah?
Well, do you know what? I really do try and not plan too far in advance, because I think if you plan too far in advance, you then get disappointed.
Love it.
So like people say, I've got a 5-year plan. I don't have a 5-year plan. I have a vague things of what I might like to do. But if you set yourself a target which is too tough, you're going to end up being disappointed. So I really want to really enjoy my job and learn as much as I can and be a really sought after commentator. And I'd like to do a lot of research into what's next for our companies here in the UK and overseas. And I'm really excited about doing that. I want to travel once more. I mean, I've been doing lots of virtual conferences. I've still been hosting global conferences, but I really do miss particularly traveling to the Middle East and being immersed in that culture. And I want to do much more of that going forward once conferences restart again, hopefully near the end of next year. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to doing that. And I would also at some point like to pursue possibly politics at some point, and being, rather than analysing political and economic events, helping to formulate policy and direction of travel, rather than being looking in, actually being somebody who is making the moves and making policy changes. But I think that's further down the line. I've got a lot to do yet. And I also really want to make sure that I get in quite a few more surfing weekends and swimming and enjoying the kids and traveling to France. So I don't want to take on too much at the moment. I think just enjoy what I've got for now.
Oh, I love it. I just got goosebumps then when you were like, I might go into politics. I'm like, oh my God, formulate policy. I've written it down. This is so exciting. And I could totally see it happening as well.
Well, we'll see.
See, when people tell me things, you know, as a coach, when people tell me things, I believe them. When they tell me what they want, I don't believe in them. That's their business, but I believe them. Oh, you might go.
I mean, there are very many different ways that you can do that. I mean, you can obviously advise from the inside without being a politician.
Yeah.
You can, become a politician. I'll be honest, I really don't think that's on my immediate horizon. Like I said, I think it's good to have possibilities. That's the thing, and not rule things out. I think I would quite like to do that, and see what happens.
How was your first year in your new job been? Have you enjoyed it?
I've been really enjoying my new job. It has been very odd starting a new job mid-pandemic without ever setting foot in the office. Wow. So I've met everybody on Zoom, and you do lose a little bit of camaraderie. We had a few Christmas drinks on Zoom, but I've only met a handful of people in the flesh. And it's a big company. So I'm really looking forward to be able to get back into the office and feeling part of a big company and really helping that company succeed. So I do think that working from home has huge benefits. It means that you can juggle your home and personal life a little bit better. But I do think that really for companies to succeed, you need that face-to-face contact within teams. And I think that some kind of part-time working is the future. So ideally, it would be 2 to 3 days in the office, 2 to 3 days at home. Because I do think that home working means that you can really concentrate. Sometimes you really need to concentrate, and you don't want your colleague coming to disrupt you. You just want to get your head down, and you don't want to appear rude by saying, I'm sorry, I just don't have the time right now. Yeah. You can do that when you're at home. Yeah. But then you also need to make sure that you build up and you collaborate and you have ideas and you can push things forward, and also you can get on with people and then they'll help you out, and you don't really get that unless you can be, I don't think, in an office environment for at least some of the week. I think it's okay temporarily, but I think working digitally forever, I don't think it's going to be good for all of us.
But a good hybrid is on the table now.
A hybrid is perfect.
No excuse now, is there? Right. So is there anything you haven't said that you want to say, or you'd like to, any little stories you want to tell, or anything you haven't said that you'd like to say in this Legends? Anything?
It's very tricky, isn't it? On this, I tell you what, one thing I have missed this year is that at the PTA, I'm involved in the PTA. I've tried to extricate myself from it because I have a very broad spectrum of children so 14 to 6. So I've been there for quite a long time. But what I have really missed is organising the PTA parents' Christmas party, because every year I manage to do some kind of cabaret, which involves dads dressing up as Spice Girls, or doing a 42nd Street, some kind of can. And we haven't been able to do that because we did think about doing it on Zoom and it just really wouldn't work.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to for the pandemic to end, because I want to get back the parents back on stage again to raise money for the school. Amazing. And see just how outrageous it can be.
And
so there we are.
Finally,
just to add a bit of Paul, my husband's always saying, I can't believe you do that every year as well as everything else to organise at Christmas. But there is something about bringing together a troop of people who are there just to have fun, and there to have fun and raise money. And it's a really special, it's a special time. And I really missed that this year. So I would really like to, get the little troop back on stage.
I agree with your husband, because I look at the amount of stuff you do. Like you said, like you very rarely sit down with a magazine and a cup of tea. I've designed my life so 50% of it consists of that. And I consider myself to be reasonably energetic. I have to be.
I know, and I do need to do, so that's why I won't join a drama group or because I can't give that commitment. But once a year for a special occasion, you think you can? I think I could do it. I can do it.
Joy and energy, and it energizes you and you love it.
And it really brings people together, and so doing those kind of things are really important.
Amazing.
And I think it's rubbed off on my daughter, who just keeps doing shows now. It's like, I really can see the generations repeating. She's wanting to do shows outside the house and always organising a party. And she recently, we realised that she'd been giving out invitations in the playground, but not just to her friends, but to her brother's friends. When we got the brother's friends' parents all phoning up saying, well, we've got the invitation to the party, but we don't yet know what time it is. And Cecily, unbeknown to me, had organised this party and invited not just her friends, but all the brother's friends as well. And I didn't even know anything about it.
So. Yes, that's a legacy there, Susannah. That is a legacy that you started and is continuing.
I know.
And she's a lovely wee ball of energy. It was so nice to come and stay at your house last year, and she was so welcoming and friendly and straight in there and chatting away to me and asking questions. And it was a real treasure, a real treat to meet her and hang out with her as well. And of course, you all call me Sigsy, right? So she started calling me Sigsy as well. So the next generation, nobody calls.
Well, I know, because I said this morning, I've got this interview with Sarah to do, and Paul's like, Sarah, and then as soon as he saw it, he was like, Sigsy!
Yes. He didn't tell me it was Sigsy.
Oh, I know now why you were so desperate to get this done and get it up and running. I said, yeah, it's not just any old Sarah.
It's a special one.
It's a special Sarah, who I hope will come back and see us very soon.
Well,
as soon as she can.
Well, it's very, it's especially concerning for me when the travel will open up. And again, Susannah, I think that you and I can't get myself wound up by it, because if I did, I would live in a permanent state of just distress. And there's no point. There's just no point.
I think that everybody, and me, I included, last week I was on a dip.
Yeah, no,
this week, and even, you just have to think, what have I got? I've got all of these things.
Yeah.
We've just got to count our blessings. And actually, social media and the way we interact, and when I say social media, I mean like gaming and everything as well. It's the social interaction online. It's been, accused of a lot, and there are huge problems, as far as influence of elections and that kind of thing. However, for bringing communities together in times like this, it's just brilliant. There have been tweets from people who've been feeling so low, and then everybody's piled in to cheer them up, and you can see it works. So it's just reach out, isn't it? It's just try and reach out and support people who you feel are a bit down. And Zoom won't be a substitute, but actually it still can be fun.
It's good. And these little interviews that I do here as well, these are brilliant for keeping me connected with people and then putting them out. It's nice to do these. So what's your philosophy then, Susannah? What do you think is how would you kind of sum it up if you wanted to give people kind of some inspo or a bit of...
I'd say set your sets. Start again, shall I? You put me on the spot.
Many ways to lead a life.
I think, you're not going to get anywhere without a bit of drive and determination. You don't have to set your sights too high, but just take little baby steps.
Yeah.
And try and achieve your dreams.
Yeah.
Along the way, those dreams will change. They might go out of reach, but there'll be something else that will pop up that you think, oh, actually, I really fancy doing that now, and just go for it.
Yeah.
But I also do think that you need to recognize when those opportunities arrive and capitalize on them. There've been times in the past when I've thought, why didn't I take that person up on that help?
Yeah, me too.
If people are reaching out, take it and make sure that you make the most of it. And every time I have succeeded, I think it's because somebody has put out their hand to help and I've taken it.
Yeah.
Whether it's from a French exchange and that hand of friendship, or my first job in journalism through somebody I went to school with who said, come and shadow me for the day, or going to report on that story and thinking, I'd like to do this, how can I? And somebody saying, well, go to that squadron, and me picking up the phone and calling them. There are little signs, I think, along the way, but you need to recognize them and follow them, because otherwise they could just disappear and you're still left in limbo. And don't be afraid to follow your dreams, though. And because I do think so much is achievable if you've got that drive and determination.
Love it. And I think for both of us, we don't need to get into anything. I think we've both veered off once in a while, or we've had knockbacks or kicks in the faces, and then I think recovery is quite.
And you know what? Those kicks in the faces, they're really hard at the time, aren't they? And I've had quite a few in my career from various different stories that I've covered, or opportunities that I've really wanted and haven't materialized. But I think you just, you do literally dust yourself off and go, okay,
right,
it's going to take me a while.
What's the next baby?
But I'll get there in the end, and I will just find a different way.
Yeah.
And I remember I always thought I'd really love to perform once again, and then somebody said, would you like to host a conference? And I could have said, oh no, I'm really quite busy, I haven't got the time. And I said, all right, then I'll give it a go. And that has opened a whole new career for me, and I absolutely love it. I love getting on stage, getting people's opinions out, presenting big events. I mean, last year I presented the Our Ocean event in Oslo, introduced the Prime Minister, John Kerry from the United States, and a whole host of really inspiring people. And I thought, gosh, if I hadn't taken that baby step to front that conference for accountants 2.5 years ago, I just wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
So you have to say yes. I think saying yes to more things will get you somewhere.
And it seems to bring you great joy as well. It's like you didn't take it for granted, stood there going, oh, if I hadn't said yes to this 2 years ago. So I think that's one thing that really kind of comes through with you, is this drive and determination of the two words that are really coming through. You seem to be really happy and really have this joie de vivre.
Yeah, but I'm certainly not happy all the time. Nobody is. I mean, you get peaks and troughs, and there are times when I feel sad and overwhelmed, like anybody does. But I suppose I just think good night's sleep always does the trick. A good night's sleep, a laugh, and just that realization that it doesn't really matter. I mean, ultimately, most of what we do, it's not a question of life and death. You might do something wrong, but it's not a huge disaster. It might be a small setback, and you've got to, I think, recognizing that then lowers anxiety levels and makes you think, okay, so I can do this, and it's not too big a drama.
I love that. And one other thing that I want to say, and specifically I'm reminded by being with you. I mean, it seems like yesterday since we met, but like knowing people for 30 years and having really long friendships, I find something so dear to me. just have the longevity of those friendships just feels so, it's so grounding, and it's something I can always turn to when I need to. I think it's just
Oh, that's so true. I mean, absolutely. It's having those people that you can call when you're just feeling low. And I think surrounding yourself with those, but also, friendships take work.
I
You've got to
agree.
give, you've got to put into a friendship. You can't
Yeah.
just take.
No.
And if you put into a friendship over decades,
Yeah.
and when you really need that support, you've got a resource to draw on, and people really want to help you.
Yeah.
And also, people want you to be honest. You meet people and their life always seems fantastic, and you think, it can't possibly be like that. But if you share your experiences, people open up to you, and then when you need to open up to them, they'll really be there for you. So you've got to also be honest and say, look,
so too.
it's not always look, it doesn't look as TV is not as glamorous as it looks. Global travel is not as glamorous as it looks. I've got a beautiful family, but it's really hard work sometimes, and you have to be honest.
I think so too, Susannah, and I love that. But these long friendships, they mean a great deal to me, and and it's just, it's not always, how can I say, it's not always love and light. So let's leave it there. I adore you. Thank you for today. Thank you to Grandad Fletcher. Thank you to your mum and dad, the amazing parents who are such good fun, and to your family. And I'm sorry that your poor son just bombed the thing there. That was edited out, but we'll just say,
it's what happens on Zoom.
Nothing goes to plan. Susannah, thank you so much. Adore you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.